Nobody moved. Not the 56,000 fans packed into Dodger Stadium. Not the coaches. Not the cameras. Not even the Pirates players standing on the field who had just watched it happen. For a brief, terrible moment, every single person inside that ballpark went completely still, because what they had just witnessed was not a baseball play. It didn't feel like one. It didn't look like one. And deep down, everyone watching knew it. Shohei Ohtani was on the ground. That sentence alone should not exist in baseball. Not in 2025. Not for a player who had spent the last several months rewriting what it means to be human in this sport. A man who hits leadoff home runs and then walks to the mound and shuts down lineups for 5 innings. A man who the sport had quietly begun to organize itself around. And now he was on the ground, and the trainers were running, and the crowd was making that sound, that low, horrified sound that stadiums only make when something has gone very wrong. This is the story of what happened next. The game had started the way most Dodgers games start when Ohtani is involved, with electricity. From the first inning, there was a different kind of attention in the air. Not just the attention of a team trying to win a baseball game. The attention of 56,000 people who had paid money to watch something they knew they might never see again in their lifetimes. That specific kind of attention. Ohtani had already made his presence known. He had worked deep counts. He had fouled off pitches that most hitters swing through. He had that look, the focused, slightly distant expression that his teammates have described as the moment they know he is locked in completely. The Pirates came in knowing that. They had prepared for it. What happened, however, suggested that preparation had taken a direction that no rulebook had anticipated. Because what the Pirates did in that 4th inning was not baseball strategy. It was something else. And by the time the trainers reached Ohtani on the ground, everyone inside that stadium had already made their judgment. The play was not accidental. That is the word that kept coming up afterward. Not in the press conferences, not immediately. But in the stands. On social media. In the quiet, stunned conversations between fans walking out toward the concourse to breathe. Accidental. And the repeated, firm conclusion that what they had seen was not that. The first call came within minutes. Not from the Dodgers dugout. Not from the umpires on the field. The first call came from inside the league offices. Because when Shohei Ohtani goes down during a nationally televised game, the response is not a standard baseball response. It becomes something larger. Something institutional. Something that requires people in rooms far from the field to make decisions very quickly. Within 30 minutes of the incident, a meeting had been called. Not a casual conversation. Not a review that would happen sometime in the next 48 hours. An emergency meeting. The kind that requires the league's senior leadership to stop whatever they are doing and sit down together and watch the footage and ask the question that everyone already knows the answer to but must ask formally anyway. Was this intentional? The meeting lasted 30 minutes. 30 minutes in which footage was reviewed from multiple angles. 30 minutes in which voices were raised and lowered and raised again. 30 minutes in which the league had to decide what kind of organization it wanted to be in response to what had just happened to the most important player in the sport. When the doors opened, the decision had already been made. 2 Pittsburgh Pirates players were permanently banned from Major League Baseball. Read that sentence again. Not suspended. Not fined. Not placed on administrative leave pending further review. Permanently banned. The kind of punishment that baseball almost never uses. The kind of punishment that signals to every player, every manager, every organization in the league that there is a line, and that crossing it has consequences that cannot be negotiated away. The names were released within the hour. The league's statement was short. It was formal. It used the careful, legal language that official statements always use. But underneath that language, the meaning was impossible to misread. What had been done to Ohtani was not a baseball play. It was not competitive aggression within the boundaries of the game. It was deliberate. It was targeted. And the league was not going to pretend otherwise. The baseball world went silent for a moment when the announcement dropped. Then it exploded. Because permanent bans in Major League Baseball are not common. They are not handed out in the heat of emotion. They require certainty. They require evidence. They require the kind of conviction that only comes when the people making the decision have seen enough, more than enough, to know that there is no other appropriate response. The fact that the league reached that conclusion in 30 minutes told its own story. 30 minutes. 2 permanent bans. The message was not subtle. But the story did not end with the announcement. It moved, the way stories involving Ohtani always move, to a room with cameras and microphones and reporters sitting in rows waiting for someone to explain what had just happened. This time, the room belonged to the Dodgers. And the man who walked in was not Dave Roberts. It was the general manager. And the expression on his face when he sat down in front of that microphone was the expression of a man who had spent the last several hours trying to process something that the sport had not prepared him to process. The room was already tense before he spoke. Reporters who cover baseball for a living, who have sat through hundreds of press conferences, who have heard every version of careful organizational language that teams use to say nothing while appearing to say something, those reporters were sitting differently in their chairs. They were leaning forward. Because everyone in that room understood that what had happened today was not a standard baseball injury story. It was something that the sport would be talking about for a long time. The GM cleared his throat. He looked down at his hands for a moment. Then he looked up. And what he said next shocked everyone in that room. He did not begin with a medical update. He did not begin with the standard language about thoughts and prayers and the team's support for Shohei during this difficult time. He did not begin with careful diplomatic words about the Pirates organization or the process of league review. He began with anger. Not the performative anger that athletes and executives sometimes use in front of cameras to show solidarity. Real anger. The kind that sits in a person's voice and makes the air in the room feel different. The kind that comes from watching something happen to someone and knowing that it did not have to happen, and knowing that the people who made it happen made a choice. He said that what had been done to Ohtani was a disgrace to the sport. The room went very quiet. He said it again, slightly differently. That there was no version of baseball, no competitive pressure, no tactical consideration, no reading of the rulebook, that justified what those 2 players had done. That the league had reached the right decision. That the Dodgers organization supported it fully. And that he wanted to be very clear about something that he felt was not being said loudly enough in the official statements. Ohtani had not done anything to invite that play. He paused there. A long pause. The kind of pause that is not accidental. The kind that a person uses when they want the words before it to sit in the room for a moment before anything else is said. A reporter asked about Ohtani's condition. The GM's expression shifted. The anger did not leave. But something heavier came in alongside it. He spoke carefully now. He said that Ohtani was being evaluated. That the medical team was with him. That the organization would share more information as it became available. He said those things in the order that organizations always say them. But then he said something else. He said that Ohtani had asked about the game before the trainers had even finished their evaluation. The room stirred. He asked what the score was. He asked how the bullpen was holding up. He asked if the team was okay. The GM stopped speaking for a moment after saying that. He looked at the table. When he looked back up, his jaw was tight. That is who Shohei Ohtani is, he said. And what happened to him today was an insult to everything this sport is supposed to stand for. The U.S. media did not wait for the press conference to end before the reaction began. Across every platform, across every network that covers baseball in this country, the story moved with a speed that even major sports stories rarely achieve. Because this was not just an injury story. It was not just a suspension story. It was a story about the most recognizable athlete in baseball, perhaps in all of American professional sports at this moment, being deliberately targeted. And then the league responding with a swiftness and a severity that signaled something important about where the sport draws its lines. By the time the GM's press conference ended, the clips were already being watched by millions. Not just the clips of the incident. The clips of his face. The clips of the pause after he said that Ohtani had asked about the game before asking about himself. The clips that captured something true about a person that statistics and highlight reels cannot fully capture. Sports media that rarely agrees on anything agreed on this. The league had done the right thing. The punishment was appropriate. And the Dodgers GM had said in that room what many people had been thinking since the moment Ohtani hit the ground. This should not have happened. There is a version of this story that ends with a press conference and a punishment and a medical update and the slow return to the normal rhythms of a baseball season. That version exists. It will play out over the coming days and weeks. But there is another version of this story that will take longer to settle. It is the version about what it means that this happened at all. About what it says that two players looked at the most extraordinary athlete the sport has produced in a generation, a man who has done nothing but play baseball at a level that makes people question whether the word baseball is even large enough to contain what he does, and made a choice that ended with him on the ground and the trainers running and 56,000 people holding their breath. The league made its decision in 30 minutes. 2 permanent bans. A press conference that shocked a room full of people who thought they had seen everything this sport had to offer. And somewhere inside Dodger Stadium, while all of that was happening, Shohei Ohtani was lying on a training table asking someone what the score was. That is the part of the story that the scoreboard will never show. That is the part that no rulebook can fully explain. There are things in this sport that exist beyond statistics and standings and official statements released by league offices. There are moments that reveal, with complete clarity, exactly who a person is. Today was one of those moments. And baseball will not forget it.